She said it like it wasn't the most important thing she had ever told him. Casual, almost offhand. The way you admitted something small when the night was quiet enough to make honesty feel safe. Never been kissed, she said. He didn't move, he didn't speak. But something in the room changed, the specific, atmospheric shift of a man who has spent years being completely in control of himself encountering, for the first time, a reason to want to be less so. He stepped closer, not fast. Not dramatically, slowly. The way you moved when you understood that the person in front of you needed slow to mean safe, and he said very quietly, "Let's start slow." She looked at him, he looked at her, neither of them moved. And this moment, this corridor between what was said and what came next, is the emotional center of a story that took 3 months to arrive here, 3 months of careful distance, 3 months of almost. 3 months of a man who made his life out of precision and patience, choosing, finally, to stop being patient. This is where it ends. But to understand what it cost to get here, you need to go back to the beginning, to a mentorship session in September, to a question she asked that she didn't know would change anything. He moved slowly for 3 months. She spent 3 months not trusting what she saw. And the moment that brought them here, the one sentence that broke his entire system, was 4 words she said like they were nothing. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city in the comments. Subscribe immediately, because this story is going to take you apart and put you back together slightly differently. The mentorship program was Daniel Chan's idea. He had proposed it to the university's business school 2 years ago, not from altruism, though he was not opposed to altruism, but from the practical recognition that talent distributed unevenly through the economy was inefficient, and that connecting established professionals with capable students produced better outcomes for everyone. He sat on the program's advisory board and took 2 mentorship assignments per semester. He was good at it because he was good at most things, prepared, precise, emotionally steady in the way that made people feel they were being seen without being exposed. He did not become attached to mentees. He had not in 4 semesters become attached to anyone. The September intake brought 7 new mentees. He was assigned 2. He read their files on a Tuesday. He met the first on a Wednesday. He met Yuna Bae on a Thursday. She arrived 4 minutes early, which he noted because punctuality was information. She was 23, Nigerian-Korean, studying international business with a focus on economic development. Her academic record was excellent. Her file noted that she was quiet in group settings and remarkably precise in written work. Her professors described her thinking as organized in a way that her speaking occasionally didn't reflect. She sat across from him. He said, "Tell me what you want from this program." Most mentees had rehearsed this answer. They delivered it with the specific, polished quality of a sentence that had been revised several times. She said, "I want someone to tell me when I'm wrong without making me feel like being wrong is permanent." He held his pen. She continued, "I have good instincts, but I overthink them. By the time I act on something, I've usually talked myself out of the best version of it." She held his gaze without performing the holding. "I want someone who can interrupt that process before it finishes." He said, "How do you want to be interrupted?" She said, "Directly, without softening it. I can handle directness better than I can handle being managed." He looked at his notes. He thought, "She knows exactly what she needs." He thought, "Most people spend years not knowing that." He said, "All right, we'll meet bi-weekly. I'll be direct. You tell me if the directness exceeds the useful range." She nodded, then she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yes, do you do this?" She said, "The mentorship program, you clearly don't need to. What do you get from it?" He held his pen. He thought about the answer he usually gave: efficiency, talent distribution, practical outcomes. He said, "The conversations are interesting." She looked at him. She said, "That's honest." He said, "You said you preferred directness." Something moved in her expression, a very brief, very specific quality of being received correctly. The expression of someone who had said what they actually meant and had been met by someone who heard it. She said, "Yes." She left at the end of the hour. He sat in the room for 4 minutes after she had gone. He thought, "The conversations are interesting." He thought, "That was a true answer." He thought, "That was the first true answer I have given to that question." He thought, "Why is that?" He did not answer this. He picked up his notes. He moved to his next meeting. He thought about her answer: "I want someone to tell me when I'm wrong without making me feel like being wrong is permanent," twice during the drive home. He did not note this. He did not examine it. He simply noticed it had happened, the way you noticed a sound you weren't sure you had actually heard. The second meeting was in October. She was 3 minutes early this time. She had a specific problem. She was developing a business proposal for her economic development course and had taken her advisor's feedback and integrated it so thoroughly that she could no longer tell what the proposal's original argument had been. He read the first draft and the revised draft side by side. He said, "The first draft had a specific position. This draft is trying to hold 4 positions simultaneously to avoid being wrong about any of them." She looked at the documents. She said, I know, he said, you integrated every note your advisor gave you. Yes, even the ones that contradicted each other. She was quiet for a moment. Then, yes, he said, that is a form of disappearing. She looked at him, he said, you are trying to be uncriticizable, but an uncriticizable argument is also an unpersuasive one. You can't move someone toward a position if you're occupying all of them simultaneously. She held the documents. She said, how do I fix it? He said, go back to the first draft. Identify the sentence that is most true, build from that sentence and ignore the rest. She said, what if the rest is important? Then it will appear naturally as you develop the argument, he said. Truth is self-organizing, let it organize. She was quiet, then she said, truth is self-organizing. She held the sentence in the air for a moment. I'm going to think about that for a long time. He said, that means the idea is useful. She said, or that I overthink everything. He said, both can be true. She looked at him with the same quality she had had in September, the expression of someone being received correctly. He thought, there it is again. He thought, I was waiting for it. He stopped this thought. He looked at his notes. He said, send me the revised draft by Thursday. She sent it Wednesday night. He read it at 11 p.m. It was significantly better. She had found the true sentence and built from it, and the argument had organized itself exactly the way he had said it would. He replied, this is the proposal. Don't revise again, she replied 4 minutes later. I was going to revise again. He replied, I know. Don't. She sent a single period as acknowledgement. He set down his phone. He thought she sent it a day early. He thought she was thinking about the revision. He thought she wanted to know if it was right before she told herself it was. He thought, I understand that. He thought about why he understood it for longer than was necessary. He went to sleep. He ran into her at the campus library on a Tuesday. He had not planned to be at the campus. He had come to return a book to a faculty colleague. He was in the east corridor, the route between the faculty offices and the main entrance, when he saw her at a table near the windows, working with her headphones in, 2 drafts in front of her, the specific expression of someone whose brain was moving faster than her hands. He could have continued to the entrance. He stopped, she looked up, she pulled out one headphone. Mr. Chan, she said. Ms. Bae, he said. She looked at the 2 drafts. He said, you're revising again. She said, different project. He said, same problem. She said, the same problem always. He said, identify the true sentence first, then build. She said, I know, I'm working on the true sentence. How long have you been working on it? 40 minutes. He set down his colleague's book. He sat across from her. She looked at him. He said, show me. She turned the draft. He read the first page. He pointed to the 3rd paragraph, 4th sentence. That one, he said. She read it. She said, I wrote that by accident. The best ones usually arrive that way, he said. She held the draft. She said, thank you. He picked up his book. He said, biweekly meetings are sufficient for draft reviews. She said, you stopped. He paused. She said, you were passing through. You didn't have to stop. He held his book. He said, no. He left. He was in his car before he identified what had happened. He had stopped. He had sat down. He had been there for 11 minutes, he thought, that was outside the program's structure. He thought, I noticed she was working and I stopped. He thought why he started the car. He thought, the conversations are interesting. He thought, that is all. He drove. He was not entirely convinced. He started arriving to his faculty meetings via the East Corridor. He did not examine this. The East Corridor passed the library's window tables. He was at the campus twice a week for advisory meetings. The East Corridor was not shorter than the main corridor. It was, in fact, slightly longer. He used it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He did not see her every time. He saw her on a Thursday in October, headphones in, different draft, the same focused expression, and on a Tuesday in November when she was at a different table with another student, apparently discussing something that made her gesticulate more than he had seen her gesticulate before. He continued to his meeting. He thought briefly about what they had been discussing. He thought, she is more expressive with people she is comfortable with. He thought, she is relatively comfortable in sessions with me. He thought, but not that comfortable. He thought, the headphones version is her actual working state. The session version is still slightly managed. He thought about what it would take for her not to manage herself around him. He stopped this thought. He went to his meeting. At the October session, she arrived with a specific question that was not about her work. She said, do you think it's possible to be overthinking as a form of protection? He looked at her. She said, I mean, I know I overthink. You've told me. My professors have told me. I've told myself. But I've been thinking about why I do it, and I think it might be because if I think long enough about all the ways something can go wrong, I can't be surprised by the wrong thing. I'm prepared for it. She looked at her hands. But I'm also never prepared for the right thing because I've spent all my energy on the wrong thing. He held his pen. He said, yes, that is an accurate description of what you're doing. She said, is it fixable? He said, it requires deciding that being wrong sometimes is less costly than being safe always. She said, that sounds like something you would find easy. he said. Why, she said, you seem very comfortable with outcomes. Like you've decided which ones you can live with and you've stopped worrying about the rest. He held his pen. He thought, that is the most accurate description of my emotional strategy that anyone has offered. He thought, she arrived at it in 2 months. He said, it's a system, it took time to build. She said, what did you have to give up for it? He looked at her. This was the most direct question she had asked him. He said, surprise. She held this word. She said, you gave up being surprised. You can't be surprised if you've accounted for all outcomes, he said. It's efficient. She said, that sounds lonely. Room was very quiet. He said, the session is about your work. She said, I know, I'm sorry. She looked at her draft. He looked at his notes. He thought, that sounds lonely. He thought she said that without cruelty. As a simple observation, he thought she was right. He thought, when did I stop noticing that? He did not add this to his notes. November brought a university networking event. Daniel attended because he sat on the advisory board and board members were expected to make appearances at these events, which he did efficiently. 30 minutes of the right conversations, clean exits, no lingering. He was near the exit at 40 minutes when he saw her. She was at the edge of the room, which he recognized as her strategy from her own description of herself in group settings. Find the position with the best sightline and the least social pressure. She was holding a drink she wasn't drinking, listening to a conversation she wasn't particularly part of. She looked comfortable and slightly elsewhere simultaneously. He recognized this. He crossed the room. She saw him coming. She said, Mr. Chan, he said, you're using the perimeter strategy. She said, I always use the perimeter strategy. He said, it's effective. She said, you're using it too. He said, I was leaving. She looked at his coat. She said, you have your coat. You were leaving and you came over here. He held his coat. He said, I wanted to mention the proposal you submitted last week. The development committee reviewed it. They found the central argument compelling. She stared at him. She said, the development committee, he said. I forwarded it for informal review. The work merited external eyes. She held her drink. She said, you forwarded my proposal. It was strong work, he said. She looked at him. She said, you could have emailed me this. He said, yes. She held his gaze. He held his coat. He thought, I came across the room. He thought, I told myself it was to deliver professional information. He thought, the professional information could have been an email. He thought, I came across the room. He said, the committee chair would like to meet with you next month if you're interested. She said, yes, of course. He said, I'll send the details. He put on his coat. He almost said, you should stay. You're better in rooms than you think you are. He said, good work, Ms. Bae. He left in the car. He thought, I almost said that. He thought, I stopped myself. He thought, why did I want to say that? He thought, because it's true and she should know it. He thought, that is a professional observation. He thought, is it? He drove. He did not answer the question. December settled into a rhythm. Sessions twice monthly. Draft reviews by email. The East Corridor twice a week. The development committee meeting arranged for January. She had started arriving to sessions with a question prepared, not about her work, though the work was always present, but a question that sat adjacent to the work. She asked them near the end of sessions, after the professional content had been covered, as if she had been holding them the entire hour. December's first question. Do you think emotional discipline is learned or inherited? He said, learned, but what you learn it from shapes how it functions. She said, what did you learn it from? He said, loss. She did not push this. December's second question. Have you ever made a decision you knew was wrong when you made it? He said, once. She waited. He said, I chose not to say something I should have said because the timing felt wrong. And by the time the timing felt right, the moment had passed. She said, what happened? He said, the person moved on, correctly. In the absence of something being said, they drew reasonable conclusions. She held this. She said, do you regret it? He said, I regret the silence more than I would have regretted saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. She said, that's what I'm afraid of. He looked at her. She said, saying the right thing at the wrong time, or the wrong thing at the right time, I can never calculate which risk is worse, so I usually say nothing. He said, and how does that work for you? She said, exactly as well as you would expect. He almost smiled. She saw the almost. She said, was that almost a smile? He said, the session is running long. She said, that was definitely almost a smile. He looked at his notes. She looked at her draft. He thought, she notices things. He thought, she notices the things I don't perform. He thought, that should feel uncomfortable. He thought, it doesn't. She started bringing him coffee, not in a significant way. The campus cafe was on her route to the session room and she had started stopping there before their meetings, and she brought him an Americano without asking what he drank because she had noticed, at the networking event, what he had ordered. The first time she set it on the table, he looked at it. He said, you didn't need to. I know, she said, I was passing the cafe. He looked at the coffee. He thought, she noticed what I ordered. He thought, she noticed that 2 months ago and remembered it. He thought, I should tell her this is outside the program's structure. He drank the coffee. He said, thank you. She said, it's just coffee. He thought, it is not just coffee, he thought. She paid attention and she acted on what she noticed and she brought it without making it mean anything out loud. He thought, that is a form of care, he thought. When was the last time someone cared about something that small? He looked at his notes. The coffee became routine. He stopped telling himself it was just coffee after the third week. January brought the development committee meeting. The committee chair, a woman in her 60s who had built a small development consultancy into a significant firm, met with Yuna for 45 minutes in a conference room that Daniel arranged but did not attend. He had made this decision deliberately. The meeting was Yuna's opportunity, not his, and his presence would shift the room's dynamic in ways that would reduce rather than expand her space. He waited in his office. He was answering emails with the specific, efficient quality of someone occupying the surface of their attention while the deeper part was elsewhere. At 12:45 his phone showed a message from an unknown number he recognized as the committee chair's personal line. Your mentee is exceptional. I'd like to bring her into the spring consultancy cohort if she's interested. He set down his phone. He thought, she is exceptional, he thought, I know. He thought about how to tell her in a way that communicated the correct weight of the information without adding anything additional. He sent her a message. The committee chair has extended an invitation to the spring consultancy cohort. It's competitive. She was persuaded by the proposal. Yuna replied in 40 seconds. I didn't know that was a possible outcome. He replied, I did, a longer pause. Then, why didn't you tell me, he replied. Because you needed to go in without the pressure of a specific outcome. You performed better without it, an even longer pause. Then, that was a calculated decision about my emotional state. He replied, yes. Then, is that strange? He looked at the question. He thought, she is asking whether it's strange that I think about her emotional state. He thought, I have been thinking about her emotional state for 4 months. He replied, it's mentorship. She replied, okay, one word. He looked at it. He thought, she doesn't entirely believe that. He thought, she is being careful with the conclusion. He thought, that is what I do. He thought, I recognize that because she learned it from watching me. He thought, or she had it already and I recognized it from the beginning. He set down the phone. He thought, she asked if it was strange. He thought, she was asking something else. He thought, and I gave her the safe answer. He thought, I always give the safe answer. He thought, I told her in December that I regret silence more than I would regret saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. He thought, I am doing the same thing I regretted. He sat with this for a long time. February's first session was different. He could feel it from the moment she sat down, not different in a visible way, but in the specific, atmospheric quality of someone who had made a decision before arriving and was waiting for the right moment to have it confirmed or contradicted. She went through the draft review efficiently. She asked good questions. She integrated his responses without the usual overthinking spiral. At the end of the session, with 5 minutes remaining, she said, can I ask you something that's not about the work? He said, yes. She said, am I the same as your other mentees? He held his pen. She said, I don't mean academically, I mean is this. She stopped. The East Corridor. He went very still. She said, I'm in the library Tuesdays and Thursdays. The East Corridor is the longer route to the faculty offices. You use it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She held his gaze. I noticed 3 months ago. He said nothing. She said, I'm not accusing you of anything, She stopped again. I overthink everything, you know that, and I've been trying to decide whether I'm overthinking this or whether I'm seeing something real, and I don't know how to decide without more information. She held his gaze. So I'm asking directly like you told me to ask things. He held his pen. He thought, she noticed 3 months ago. He thought, she has been trying to decide for 3 months. He thought, she is asking me directly because I told her directness was better than silence. He thought, and now I have to answer. He thought, the safe answer is it's the mentorship. The sessions matter. I take them seriously. He thought, that answer is technically true. He thought, it is also incomplete in a way that will cost her. He thought, she will hear the incomplete truth and draw the reasonable conclusion from it. He thought, the reasonable conclusion will be wrong. He thought, I need to. His phone rang, not a vibration. A full ring, the one he used for calls that couldn't wait, which was 3 people total and one of them was calling now. He looked at the screen. He looked at Yuna. He said, I have to take this. She said, of course. He answered the call. He stepped out. The call was 6 minutes. When he came back, the session room was empty. She had left a note on the table, which was not something she had ever done. I shouldn't have asked. I'll see you at the next session. He held the note. He thought, she is apologizing for asking directly. He thought, I told her to ask directly. He thought, she asked directly and I answered the phone. He thought, she is going to interpret this as confirmation that she was overthinking. He thought, she is going to draw the reasonable conclusion. He thought, the reasonable conclusion is wrong. He sat in the empty room. He thought, I need to fix this. He thought, I don't know how to fix this without saying the thing I am not ready to say. He thought, I am not ready. He thought, am I not ready? He sat in the room for a long time. She came to the February 2nd session. She was professional. She had a draft. She asked precise questions. She received his feedback without the end-of-session personal question. She did not bring coffee. He noticed the absence of the coffee immediately and said nothing. The session ran its full hour. She thanked him. She left. He sat in the room. The coffee had become so routine that its absence was its own kind of information. She was pulling back, not dramatically, not in a way that violated the program's structure. But the question had been asked, the phone had rung, she had drawn a conclusion, and she was now operating on that conclusion. He thought, I should send her a message. He thought, what would the message say? He thought, it would have to say the thing I haven't said. He thought, I am not ready to say it in a message. He thought, I should say it in person. He thought, the next session is in 2 weeks. He thought, 2 weeks is a long time for a wrong conclusion to become foundational. He sent her a message. The consultancy cohort begins in March. I'd like to discuss preparation before the end of February. Could we schedule an additional session? She replied, in 3 hours, of course, I'll check my schedule. She sent a time the next day. It was the most efficient exchange they had had. He thought, she is being professional. He thought, she is putting the program back where it belongs. He thought, she decided I confirmed her conclusion and she is adapting to it. He thought, she is very good at adapting. He thought, I was supposed to be the one who interrupted her overthinking process. He thought, instead I gave her more to overthink. The additional session was on a Thursday. He had decided he would answer the question she had asked. Not completely, not the full extent of what had been true for months, but enough to correct the reasonable conclusion. She arrived, she was composed, she set her work on the table. He said, before we start, the question you asked at the last session. She looked at him, she said, you don't have to. He said, the East Corridor. She held her hands on the table. He said, you were not overthinking it. She held very still. He said, the conversations are not the same as other mentees. She said, what does that mean? He said, it means. The door opened. 2 other faculty members, colleagues he knew who knew him, came in apologetically. The room's doubled booked, one of them said. Sorry, Daniel, the system didn't catch the conflict. He looked at the door, he looked at Yuna, he said, we can move to. It's fine, she said, she was already gathering her things. I have a class at 4, we can continue at the regular session. She was out of the room in 40 seconds. He stood in the doorway. He thought, I said it. He thought, I said you were not overthinking it. He thought, she heard it. He thought, and then the door opened. He thought, she is going to sit with those 3 words for 2 weeks and not know what to do with them. He thought, you were not overthinking it. Without the rest, that sentence is almost worse than nothing. He thought, it confirms that something is there. He thought, but not what it is. He thought, she is going to overthink that. He found out about the rumor from Min, not the Min of Victor Kang's story but his own assistant Sue, who attended the business school alumni events and had heard something being said. There is a perception among some students, Sue said carefully, that your investment in one particular mentee is not entirely professional in nature. Daniel held his coffee. He said, who? Sue said, it's not specific, it's the kind of thing that happens when patterns are noticed. He said, what patterns? Sue said, the East Corridor, the networking event, the committee chair forwarding, the additional session. Daniel said, those are mentorship activities. Sue said, I know. A pause. I'm telling you because she may hear it framed differently. He set down his coffee. He thought, she may hear, he is professionally invested because she is a project. He thought, she may hear, the pattern others see as strategic, not personal. He thought, she may hear the opposite of the truth and have no way to distinguish it from the truth. He thought, I need to say the thing clearly before someone else's version of it reaches her first. He thought, I need to say it now. He called the number she had used in their message exchange. It rang 4 times, voicemail. He did not leave a message. He thought, I am leaving this too long. He thought, I am doing what I regretted. He thought, I am choosing silence at the wrong time. He thought, I know this and I am still doing it. He thought, what is stopping me? He knew what was stopping him. The same thing that had always stopped him. The loss of the outcome he couldn't control. The university's east building had a rooftop terrace used for events in spring and fall. In February it was empty, cold but not prohibitively cold, and the view of the city made it the kind of place people went when they needed to be somewhere that wasn't a room. He found her there on a Tuesday, not because he had followed her. Because he had come to the East Building for a faculty meeting that ended early, and he was in the stairwell when he heard the rooftop door close, and he went up because he stopped justifying it to himself partway through. He went up because she was there. She was at the railing. She turned when the door opened. She said, Mr. Chan. He said, Ms. Bae. He stood at the door. She looked at the city. She said, the view is good from here. He said, yes. He crossed to the railing. He stood beside her, not close, the appropriate distance of 2 people looking at the same thing. She said, I heard something. He said, from whom? She said, a student in my cohort. She said, she stopped. She said, the pattern everyone has noticed is that you're invested in me as a project, that this is what you do. You identify capable people and you build them up and then you move to the next intake. He held the railing. She said, I know that's probably just. He said, no. She looked at him. He said, that's not what this is. She held his gaze. He said, I told you at the last session you were not overthinking it. She said, what am I not overthinking? He held the railing. He looked at the city. He thought, say it. He thought, this is the moment. The door is not going to open. The phone is not going to ring. She is right here and she has asked directly and she deserves the answer. He thought, say it. She said very quietly, I've never been kissed. He turned. She was looking at the city. Her profile, the specific, composed quality of someone who had said something true and was waiting to see what happened to it. She said, I know that's, I don't know why I said that. It just felt like an honest moment and I was trying to be honest because you told me honesty. He stepped closer, not fast, not dramatically, slowly. She turned. He said very quietly, let's start slow. She looked at him. He held her gaze. The city spread below them. His phone was silent. The door was closed. Nothing interrupted. And for the first time in the story that had been building for 3 months, in all the almost moments and East Corridor routes and coffees and interrupted sentences and questions asked and almost answered, there was no one coming and no phone ringing and no door opening and nothing to do except be in it. She said, you've been in the East Corridor for 3 months. He said, yes. She said, you forwarded my proposal because you wanted the committee chair to see me. He said, yes. She said, you remember what I ordered at the cafe even though I've only ordered in front of you once. He said, chai latte, extra warm, no syrup. She held his gaze. She said, you were going to answer the question at the last session before the door opened. He said, yes. She said, answer it now. He held her gaze. He said, I didn't understand something for a long time. She waited. He said, I thought slowing everything down meant I was protecting both of us. He looked at her. It was just delaying what I already felt. She said, what did you feel? He said, you weren't confusing. I was afraid of recognizing you too clearly. He held her gaze. I recognized you in September in the first session. When you said you wanted someone to tell you when you were wrong without making you feel like wrong was permanent. A pause. I thought I can do that, and then I thought I want to. And then I stopped thinking and started finding reasons to be in corridors. She said, 3 months of corridors. He said, yes. She said, and now, he said, I don't want to slow this anymore. She held his gaze. She was very close and he was very close and the city was below them and the thing that had been almost for 3 months was finally simply present. She said, start slow. He said, yes. He did not move faster than slow. He was, as it turned out, very good at slow. The cafe was not crowded at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday. She was there when he arrived, 6 minutes early, which he noted. She had a chai latte in front of her, still steaming, and her hands were around the cup with the specific quality of someone holding something warm to settle their nerves. He sat across from her. She looked at him. He looked at her. He said, I owe you a direct answer to the question you asked in February. She said, you gave me one on the rooftop. He said, I gave you a partial one. On the rooftop I told you what I felt. I didn't tell you how long I had felt it or what I had been doing about it. She held her cup. He said, September, first session. You said you wanted someone to tell you when you were wrong without making you feel like wrong was permanent. And I thought I can do that, I want to do that. He held her gaze. That was not a professional thought. She was very still. He said, every session after that I came with the specific, deliberately maintained intention of being your mentor and nothing more. The East Corridor was not a plan. It happened before I identified it as a pattern. The coffee was not something I expected. When you first brought it, I understood what it was, and I said thank you and I didn't address it, because addressing it would have required saying something I wasn't ready to say. She said, why weren't you ready? He said, because the last time I recognized something like this clearly, I had a choice between saying it and losing control of the outcome or not saying it and keeping the outcome safe. I chose safe. The person moved on. I spent 3 years understanding that I regretted the silence more than I would have regretted the wrong thing at the wrong time. She said, you told me that story in December. He said, yes. She said, you were telling me about yourself. He said, yes. She held her cup. She said, and then you did the same thing again. He said, until the rooftop. Yes. She looked at the table. She looked at him. She said, I told you I've never been kissed. He said, yes. She said, that was, I don't know why I said it. It just came out. It felt honest. He said, it was honest. She said, and you said, let's start slow. He said, yes. She said, what does that mean to you, start slow? He held her gaze. He said, it means I'm not going to rush what you're not ready for, but it also means I'm not going to stop. I've been stopping for 3 months and it was cowardice dressed as consideration. She looked at him. She said, that sounds lonely. He recognized the phrase. He said, you said that in November. She said, about your system, not about this. He said, it applies to both. She held her cup. She said, I don't want you to stop. He held her gaze. She said, I want you to be honest when things are true instead of waiting until they're safe, because I can handle the truth. I just can't handle the almost. He said, I know. She said, so start slow but start. He held her gaze, he said, Thursday. She said, what's Thursday? He said, the restaurant near campus, the one you mentioned. She held her cup, she said, that's not slow. He said, no, he said, it's a start. She looked at him. She almost smiled, the real kind, the kind that arrived before the decision to smile. He saw it, he thought, there it is, he thought, that is the thing I have been finding reasons to be in corridors for, he thought, 3 months of almost, he thought, I am not doing that anymore. She said, Thursday, he said, yes. She picked up her cup, he had not ordered anything. She slid the chai latte across the table to him, he looked at it, she said, I ordered 2. He held the cup, he thought, she ordered 2, he thought, she ordered 1 for herself and 1 for me before I arrived because she remembered what I drank even though she was the one who ordered for me every time. He thought, she was paying attention, he thought, she has been paying attention the whole time. He thought, both of us have been paying attention, he thought, both of us have been afraid, he thought, one of us finally stopped, he held the cup, he said, thank you, she said, it's just coffee. He said, it is not just coffee. She looked at him, he held her gaze, he said, it has never been just coffee. If this story lived in you, if every session, every corridor, every almost felt like yours, subscribe immediately. Drop your city in the comments below. Tell me which moment finally broke the seal. September's question, the note on the table, the rooftop, or 2 cups of coffee because she ordered 1 for each of them. New story soon. Same promise, impossible to stop, I'll see you there.